I think I'm a special one.
Fabregas, lovely ball threaded through. Costa, what a start!
Frank Lampard to win it. He's got it.
He's done it! The greatest night in the history of Chelsea Football Club.
Chelsea won, Arsenal won. Daniel Childs here. Welcome back to Son of Chelsea. Hope you're doing really well. Got back from Stamford Bridge and I've been a little bit surprised by some of the negative reaction to that result and performance because, sure, it's not the big win we wanted, but given where the table is, and maybe this is something we're going to be delving into on the show across the course of this international break, now we can reflect on this first 11 Premier League games. We can really reflect on the first kind of block of the season. You know, I think when you look in context where we thought Chelsea were going to be, some of the fears we had pre-season, some of the fears we had very early on, and some of the fears I had very early on looking at this team, and some of the deficiencies that are there, and you look at the Premier League table, and in the context of this game, the way I think Chelsea performed against a team that desires to be challenging for the title and has been for the past 2 seasons, I don't think it's fair to kind of turn around and go, it's a disaster. Look at the points. A point I've seen brought up several times now is that if you look at the number of points, Chelsea, although they are third in the league, there's actually not that much of a difference between where you are in third compared to where you are in, say, 12th. So the gap is not that big. Sure, but I kind of think that's a little bit disingenuous, I have to be honest, because, you know, if Chelsea were 12th, the mood would be radically different. You know, it's not the case of just 3 points. I think, you know, we have to look broader than that. Chelsea, I think today competed very well. I think they were able, like they were the previous week against Man United, to be in an awkward position in the second half where the game could have been taken away from them against a much better side. And I think they responded well. An individual who was the standout in Pedro Neto made the difference. There are some kind of tactical or personnel questions or kind of frustrations I maybe had in the game that we'll get into. But given, again, I think it's unfair to kind of, sometimes, unfortunately, football doesn't always give you the concrete, obvious and defining answers that we all want. I think it's easy sometimes to want and to crave, especially in the modern world, kind of a very black or white answer to a game. And either we've beaten Arsenal and it's amazing, or we've lost to Arsenal and it's absolutely terrible. The frustration of a draw, even, you know, obviously there are different variants in terms of draws, but, you know, my review of the United game a week ago is very different to this one, even though Chelsea are at home. Of course, you have to take oppositions into account. You have to take the whole performance into account. And I think that's a fair way of looking at it. I wasn't surprised that Cole Palmer made the starting 11. I think most of us thought he would make it. And, you know, even if he was like 60-70%, and to see how that kind of has an impact on him, because apparently he was limping post-game, leaving the stadium. So let's hope it's nothing too drastic and he can have actually quite a chilled international break, because the fear is that he exerts himself even more in the international break and then comes back with a bigger problem, which of course is a concern. I think the big shock about that starting 11 by far was the exclusion of Reece James. Instead, Malo Gusto, who's been widely maligned so far this season, especially over the past week, making his way into the starting 11. Marc Cucurella expected return to the first team as the left back. I thought, especially against Bukayo Saka, the way Cucurella would work against Saka, I thought that would be an effective move by Enzo Maresca, and it absolutely was today. And, you know, the rest of the team speaks for itself. Lavia, Caicedo, Madueke staying in the team, Palmer, Neto, and Nicholas Jackson. Now, I think that there were different stages to this game. You know, I thought that Chelsea, in periods in the first half, looked like a threatening team, especially down that left with Pedro Neto. It felt like for a lot of today, and quite obviously with the way our eventual equaliser came, was through Neto. He's been direct, he's been effective, he's been someone that very much looks like a guy who's trying to elevate the tempo of Chelsea's game. You know, you always feel like Neto, if Chelsea are looking a little bit sluggish, he's the one demanding the ball. He's the one demanding an extra burst of energy. And that's absolutely, I think, what we needed today, especially when we were 1-0 down. You know, when you come up against this Arsenal side, even with the struggles they've had in form recently, especially with Martin Odegaard back, who I think was a massive player for them today, expectedly. He's a key midfielder for them. The way he's able to control and dictate tempo. I think when they don't have him in central midfield, it's a massive decrease in terms of the way they're able to control a game. And I think Odegaard actually got better as the game went on. So, for Chelsea, without Odegaard, maybe it would have been a different story today. But, you expect that the technical quality, the wide threats they have with Bukayo Saka, you have to be aware of, obviously, Kai Havertz, who was a big part of today, and, of course, their threat at set pieces. Now, the early big moment of the game, really, or the one that stands out to me was, of course, Kai Havertz, the offside goal, the one that gets brought back by VAR. Very funny, and I did think Havertz would play a big role in this game. Luckily, not in the scoreline in the end, but in terms of the way he was treated by the bridge, the way he was tussling with Chelsea players throughout the game, and there's a number of clips doing the rounds on social media that you can find of Chelsea players giving Havertz a lot of grief. Late on in the game, Reece James absolutely bodied Kai Havertz, and the referee was standing right there and didn't do much about it. And I think for Havertz, just on kind of the way Chelsea fans react to him, I've always been someone that doesn't like the idea that we take players who have done good things for us in the past and kind of turn on them. I don't personally like it. However, my exception to this rule, and it's the Thibaut Courtois rule, if the player goes out of his way to kind of demonize, to try and antagonize and say things that I think are intentionally meant to get a rise, I think that Havertz can't be that surprised with the reaction. This is a guy who's been going out there talking about how even my Champions League with Chelsea, which is the best moment of his career by a country mile, and maybe the best moment of his career by a country mile by the time he's done in his career, talking about how it actually would mean more to him to win it at Arsenal, a club he's only been at for like a year. And, when you say stuff like that, and, Chelsea fans who are very, very patient with Kai Havertz, Chelsea fans are kind of notoriously patient with some attackers when I think they really shouldn't be. And I think Havertz falls into that bracket. Some of the atrocious performances he put out there as our centre forward, especially compared to what we are getting more so with Nicholas Jackson right now, is night and day. But, it was just so funny. He thinks he's got one over on Chelsea, puts, the shushing celebration as a massive celebration, and it gets pulled back, and it was just a massive cheer, objectively hilarious. And from there, I think maybe for Havertz, it was quite a tale of maybe that getting into his head a little bit. And I thought the way Fofana and Colwell dealt with him was a lot better as the game went on. And of course, there was a big chance in the first half. Malo Gusto is probably kicking himself that he didn't somehow put that header into the back of the net. He was crashing the back post. It was a great cross by Pedro Neto. So on another day, Neto could have scored and also assisted a Chelsea goal. Just kind of speaks to why his performance was really good. And I think in terms of Chelsea's creativity today, actually, when you look at the numbers, we had a higher XG than Arsenal in the game. We had more shots than them, same number of shots on target, and the big chance missed obviously was that Malo Gusto one. So Chelsea definitely looked at times like they were going to be able to hurt Arsenal. I think to give Arsenal some credit, I think defensively they were almost immaculate today. That is one of the things that is kind of standard with Mikel Arteta's team. I think it's a frustration maybe of Arsenal fans currently that maybe it's holding them back, or maybe it's becoming too much of a crutch for them in certain games. And, it did take a worldy strike from Neto in the second half to get Chelsea back into the game. Just really frustrating the way Chelsea conceded, though. Really sloppy. Saka and Martinelli on that left side. Malo Gusto, maybe if he's playing a more conventional role, should be there. The ease to which, Colwell's basically keeping everyone on side. And to be fair, the Havertz offside goal in the first half was also Chelsea being very slack and not being that aware of a situation developing, and luckily we got aware of it because Havertz was offside. But in the second half we didn't, and so there's the defensive structural side that allows Arsenal to get in the box very easily. But then also Rob Sanchez again, it's just how he gets beaten so easily at his near post telegraphs where that ball's going to go, and Martinelli has a very easy job. Every week we can talk about Rob Sanchez. That's what it is. So then there's a fear Arsenal, they can sit a little bit deeper, they can hit Chelsea on the counter, or Chelsea going to implode a little bit here. But Pedro Neto, Really nice combo with Enzo Fernandez, who came off the bench and just absolutely rifled it into the bottom corner. I think Arsenal had maybe structurally been a little bit off in that moment. I think Rice was a little bit too deep, which then allowed that space to open up, but Chelsea taking full advantage. And obviously, the limbs inside Stamford Bridge, I mean, in terms of, I wasn't personally there for the Man United game, but it did feel like a massive celebration inside Stamford Bridge. The frustration, I think, from them for me was I felt like Chelsea could have done more in that last period of the game. And I think this is where I'm maybe looking towards Enzo Maresca a bit. And it's a criticism I had of him last week, is sub-selection. And maybe I'm being unfair, but I think Mykhailo Mudryk, this is on Mudryk as well. There was a couple of moments late on where Chelsea were able to break on Arsenal and they were playing a high line. And this is where Enzo or Palmer have the ball, and I'm waiting to see Mudryk burst down that left wing and look to break the offside trap. And he's nowhere to be seen. He's behind the halfway line. He is where a central midfielder or even like an inverted left back should be. The lack of game intelligence is astonishing from Mudryk, and that is why he won't be playing Premier League games. And I think he shouldn't be playing Premier League games, because as a sub, that's what Mudryk should be brought on to do, use his speed. If he's not going to use that, what is he there for? And that was really frustrating. And then the fact that Mykhailo Mudryk, Christopher Nkunku, didn't come on till very late for Nicholas Jackson, who didn't have the best game. He didn't have an atrocious game, but didn't have the best game. I think it's really frustrating, and I wonder those conversations about Nkunku's future will rise up again. Because also another point of this game, unfortunately, that we have seen Liverpool and Man United away, is Palmer struggling a little bit to get into things. And I think that is obviously a big conversation at the moment. You can maybe today put it down to a little bit of fitness, maybe, but also it can't be the case that if Palmer's struggling to get into the game and maybe he's being marked out, that's Chelsea's attack done. I don't think that's the case, because we look at the numbers. Chelsea still created opportunities, and against Arsenal, you can't expect it to be like against, I don't know, Brighton a few weeks ago or Noah, right? Like you can't expect Chelsea are going to create 5 XG, in this game. They're going to, obviously, it's a tight game. There's going to be few chances. But at the same time, I think it's then comes a bigger question of Maresca's ability to rotate, to also figure out a way, say if Palmer's being marked out of a game, okay, how can I change things here to bring on something a little bit, something different maybe? And I think that's where Nkunku, for me, should come to the fore a lot more in this game. And for me, Nkunku should be deemed a bigger player than Mykhailo Mudryk in this situation. Because if Mudryk isn't going to use his speed in transition, then what's the point? And that's kind of my frustration. So maybe you guys agree, disagree. I just felt also there was maybe a bit more for Chelsea in that game than there actually seemed to be, or they seemed to be going at. There were many times where Chelsea could have maybe hit Arsenal on the break a bit more, and maybe Maresca's kind of deep-seated kind of a belief in control was coming to the fore, because he was clearly telling the players and Sanchez to hold the ball, and that was frustrating the crowd a bit, because I think there was a willingness to see Chelsea go for the juggler a little bit more with few seconds remaining. And of course Arsenal had a chance late on, but I think that would have been offside in the dying minutes. So we saw Reece James come on. Hopefully that number 10, right-sided number 10 role grows more for Reece James, because I'm excited to see him in that. Neto is Chelsea's best winger at the moment. He absolutely is, and he is changing games, and wonderful contribution from him. I have to say, we're going to delve into this more. Just look at the Premier League table and tell me it's been a bad start for Chelsea. Sure, we can look at points gaps and all of that, but I think what my analysis was during the summer. I can't now sit here and be disingenuous and say Chelsea are underachieving. I can't. I think it's non-negotiable Chelsea need Champions League football, but if you look at the Premier League table, if you look at where Chelsea have been after a very difficult run of games, look at where Chelsea have been in 11 games. They've played Man City, they've played Arsenal, they've played Liverpool away, they've played, I know whether we deem it, the biggest game ever, Man City away, of course. We've even Newcastle, I would deem a decent result a few weeks ago. We have faced a run of games that are more tricky than others. And now we go into a block of games after this international break as we run into Christmas, where Chelsea hopefully can put that good form back into effect and win some more games, because, they've given themselves a good starting platform. Their frustrations, there's weaknesses, we'll cover them and continue to go through them. I think they're quite obvious. But I have to say that content is the word that's coming to mind. Not outstanding, not over the moon, but content, because context of recent years, context of pre-season expectations, and context of maybe other clubs, and also where maybe some deficiencies are, and looking at that table and thinking there's a platform here to build upon. And I think Chelsea's response in that second half after going 1-0 down was positive. Let me know your thoughts on everything I discussed in the comments below, and I will see you again very soon. All the best.